We are here today because our bipartisan governing elite and its media apologists have turned Mr. Jefferson on his head to America's detriment. Today's leaders in both parties unrelentingly intervene in the affairs of other nations and regions, and by all appearances, care not a damn about preserving America's independence. These individuals aspire to be celebrated citizens of the world, believing that being an American citizen is a humdrum affair best left to the rest of us who pay for their imperial aspirations and interventionist wars with our taxes and soldier children. When we celebrated Independence Day 8 days ago, no party leader had the moral courage to tell Americans the truth, which is that in the last 50 years, both parties have eviscerated our independence in regard to the single most important issue of foreign policy, that is the decision on whether or not to go to war. Both parties, for example, have failed to move the United States to energy security since the first Arab embargo in 1973. Instead of freeing our economy from the Arab-held dagger that is pointed at its heart, American presidents, Democrats and Republicans, have shamefully groveled, begging for more oil from their energy-producing masters in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Muslim police states. The same presidents have so enormously overspent the public treasury that they have put America further in the thrall of the Arab tyrants, who buy an ever-increasing portion of our debt. Because of this cowardly leadership, Americans find that they have lost control of the decision of whether to go to war. If an anti-Saudi unrest in the kingdom's eastern province ever severely curtails oil production, U.S. soldiers and Marines will automatically deploy there to protect the Saudis' police state and to restore production. And the reality of the automatic war for oil goes beyond the Arab world. By 2012, the United States will receive 20% of its crude from Africa's Niger Delta and the Gulf of Guinea. If production in that region, which is already being plagued by insurgent attacks, is ever significantly reduced, U.S. soldiers and Marines will automatically be deployed there to restore production. And if you think the insurgencies being fought today in Iraq and Afghanistan are nightmares, wait until our men and women are fighting in the Niger Delta's 27,000 square kilometers of swamp and forest. We also have lost control of the peace or war decision because our bipartisan elite has decided to involve America almost inextricably in the unending and unendable war between Arabs and Israelis. Ignoring and even ridiculing the Founding Fathers' explicit guidance to avoid involving the United States in other people's wars, both parties have not only done so in the Middle East, but they have blithely involved us in other people's religious wars. Can there be any better definition of an insane foreign policy than the one that today finds the United States not only being involved voluntarily in someone else's war, but backing both of the major antagonists in that war, Israel and Saudi Arabia? By being the main financer and unquestioning protector of Israel, and the only protector of the fundamentally anti-American Saudi state, Washington has created a situation in which America will be drawn into the next Arab-Israeli war, no matter what the wishes or interests of the American people. Having thus all but negated the ability of the United States to abstain from wars over oil and wars between Arabs and Israelis, our political elite has completed this axis of doom for Americans by their limitless zeal for democracy crusading overseas, a perversion of what America stands for that can only lead to war and more war. Our elite's democracy crusade in Iraq has destabilized the entire region, creating new threats to oil supplies and driving up the price. It has cost American taxpayers nearly $750 billion, killed 2,400 of their soldier children, 4,200 of their soldier children, and wounded 30,000 more. A few more such missions accomplished in the democracy-building realm will bankrupt our nation. And the still present threat of another democracy-imposing war against Iran, which is a more democratic state than any of Washington's Islamo-fascist Arab state allies, would be a negative achievement of epic proportions. War on Iran would be disguised as a campaign to liberate the Iranians, but in reality would be nothing more than a war to protect Israel. Such a war, moreover, would unite the entire Muslim world, 1.4 billion Muslims if you're counting, in a jihad against the United States. Our bipartisan governing elite then has brought Americans face to face with war at every turn. Wars over oil, wars over the religious conflicts of foreigners in which no genuine U.S. national interest is at stake, and wars to impose secular democracy on people who will resist it to the death. This situation is surely the antithesis of what the founders intended when they designed a constitutional system meant to limit the chance of arbitrary government that inevitably leads to tyranny. The founders knew, and Americans must relearn, that there is no better definition of tyranny than one that finds an entire nation led into war by the negligence, personal beliefs, or even the whims of a single individual, be he or she a king, a dictator, or a popularly elected president. Americans must begin to reestablish the control over the decision of when and where to go to war by removing from office an interventionist elite that is ready to destroy the American Republic and replace it with an expanding American empire. The question, of course, is how to begin to draw back from the blank check war commitments our leaders have given to foreigners. Let me suggest several ways. We must accelerate conversion to alternative energies, expand nuclear power, and further exploit U.S. fossil fuel reserves. Nothing should be allowed to deter the ingenuity and the initiative of Americans from gaining energy self-sufficiency. Demands for absolute protection for Arctic hares or shrimp-inhabited reefs at the cost of dead American soldiers and Marines should be ignored. Beyond oil, America has no national interests in the Arab Peninsula, save freedom of navigation, which the U.S. Navy can ensure. And as our energy dependence ends, this will be clear. Self-sufficiency will allow Americans to stop protecting the Gulf's tyrannies, which now cloud our economic destiny, export religious hatred for us, and make our advocacy of freedom appear to be pure and even spectacular hypocrisy. It also will end the current cruel reality that sees some portion of the price U.S. parents pay at the pump flow from oil-rich Arabs to the Islamic insurgents who are killing their children in Iraq and Afghanistan. We must stay out of other people's wars.